to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who ill-treat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies. Do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful.
Well, here we are, just a couple of brief paragraphs, really. Some very familiar ideas in them, and a less than stellar opening line there in verse 27, isn't it? But to you who are listening, I say. I mean, it's of little comfort, but I suppose some encouragement to us preachers that even Jesus feared some might sort of nod off while he was teaching. But to you who are listening, I say. Now, what he's actually doing there is he's saying that this matters. This part's serious. He's grabbing their attention again as they reeled from the shock of the great reversal of fortunes and the blessings and woes we looked at last week. You recall back in verse 22, blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man. Or verse 26, woe to you when everyone speaks well of you. Personally, this past week I had to use those two verses quite often to keep my sanity. But anyhow, how do we live out those blessings? Well, what does a true disciple really look like then? What's the characteristic of God's family? But to you who are listening, I say, well, what does he say? What's the big secret, Jesus? And the answer, of course, is love. We sigh. I mean, we nod in agreement because you can't disagree with that, can you? It's like baseball and apple pie, and then we doze off again, wondering why we came all this way to hear something as blandly nice as that. I mean, of course, we should realize that when Jesus speaks, he's never just blandly nice. The love he talks about here is nothing soppy. It's astonishingly generous. And that's what makes it in the family likeness. That's what makes it a characteristic of the Heavenly Father. Look how he summarized it at the end of the paragraphs, verse 35. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Staggering, isn't it? The characteristic of the Most High, the most powerful figure in the cosmos, is that he gives without ever expecting anything back. I don't know what sort of picture of God you carry around with you, but does it jive with this one? I hope so. He'll love his enemies. It's not blandly nice, you see. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. It's love for the undeserving. It was back in 1990 when the Boston Globe carried the story of an extraordinary wedding banquet. It was about how a Connecticut woman named Kathleen Gibley came along with her fiance to the Hyatt Hotel in Boston, and they met with the event planner to choose the menu. They pored over all the books, looked at samples of table linens. They decided on what sort of silverware and floral arrangements, everything else they wanted. And they had pretty extravagant tastes. And the bill, even in those days, came to over $13,000. And so they put half the money down as a deposit, and they went home to sort of look at the next bit of whatever you did to plan the wedding. Each week, the bride-to-be would send a check to the hotel, and eventually she had it paid in full. Well, the day that the invitations for the wedding were due to be mailed, the potential groom got cold feet. I'm just not sure, he said. I mean, it's a big commitment. Let me think about it a little bit longer. And when a few days later, his still very angry fiance went to the Hyatt to cancel the banquet, the event manager couldn't have been more understanding. The same thing happened to me, she said, and told the story of her own broken engagement. But about the refund, she only had bad news. I'm sorry, but the contract is non-refundable. It's final. You're only entitled to $1,300 back. And you really only have two options. You could leave here with $1,300, or you could go ahead with the banquet. I'm just so sorry. I can't do anything. And although it seemed crazy, the more the jilted bride thought about it, the more she liked the idea of going ahead with the party anyway. Not a wedding reception, but a big party. You see, as a little girl, her and her mom were in and out of shelters. They were regulars at soup kitchens all across the city, often living out of mom's car for months on end. And she did very well at school, and she received a full ride to one of the most prestigious universities around Boston, and she found a great job. And now she had the wild notion of kind of using this event to treat the down and outs of Boston to a night on the town. And so it was in June 1990 in the Hyatt Hotel in Boston. A party was thrown, the likes that had never been seen before. The catering manager changed the menu to boneless chicken in honor of the groom, as she put it, and she sent out invitations to rescue missions, to homeless shelters. And in that warm summer's evening, people who were accustomed of sort of peeling half-gnawed pizza off cardboard dined instead on chicken cordon bleu. Hyatt waiters in tuxedos served hors d'oeuvres to senior citizens propped up by walkers and crutches and bag ladies, vagrants, addicts, took one night off from the hard life of the sidewalks and instead sipped champagne, ate chocolate wedding cake, and danced to big band melodies late into the night. The down and outs experienced grace for an evening. The true disciple experiences grace for eternity. The child of the Most High expresses grace for a lifetime. And so let's look at this grace, this love, a bit more closely, because running through these two paragraphs is a contrast between what Jesus teaches and lives and what others say, what the culture expects, what we assume to be the norm. You see, here's the first thing about this love. It's more than a grin and bear it love. I mean, look again at the beginning at verse 27. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Love your enemies, not just your friends, love them. It's more than grin and bear it, isn't it? It's more than be stoical. It's more than stiff upper lip. More than sort of suck it up and don't lash out. No, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. And please, this is real life. This is not theory talk. Jesus is speaking to Jews who are living under an occupying power. And like pretty much every other set of occupying troops in history, these were troops with their fair share of incidents of abuse and oppression. Jesus is speaking to disciples whom he's just told that blessing will mean being hated, excluded, insulted, rejected. And he says, love your enemies. Hated, excluded, insulted, rejected. That's the reality many Christians around the world still live with every day. It's normal for them to deal with real oppression because of their faith. But for us here in the West, things have been pretty comfortable for a long time. We're only now starting to taste what that kind of rejection or hostility feels like. And when it hits, when you're suddenly hurting from being mistreated or excluded because of Jesus, the very last thing that pops into your head is love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Verse 28, pray for those who mistreat you. Mistreat would be far too strong a word, but I remember an assistant professor from seminary who really rubbed people the wrong way, who didn't seem to be the friend of the gospel he claimed to be. And I can remember reading these words and starting to pray for him. And it changed my attitude. It changed my heart, really. I still thought he was wrong, and I still thought something needed to be said, but how I thought of him, how I acted towards him changed. It's difficult to pray for someone and stay bitter. Do you pray for other people regularly, routinely? I wonder if today isn't time to add a name or two to those you pray for. Yeah, I pray for family and friends, as I guess many of us do. But this week, as I've been reading this, I realized I needed to add an enemy or two to my prayer list. And when someone becomes an enemy, actually, our first instinct is to cross them off the prayer list, isn't it? And Jesus says, pray for them. What enemy do you pray for? Or look at verse 29. If someone slaps you on the cheek, it may be a physical strike, it might be an insult. The phrase covers both ideas, and Jesus experienced both. Turn to them the other also, which is easier said than done, isn't it? And when someone takes a cheap shot at you, whether it's physically or verbally, and the blood boils and the indignation rises, and we're in kind of a get-even mode or survival mode, well, turning the other cheek doesn't exactly make the top 5 options that come racing through my mind. And to do it involves taking hurt on yourself, absorbing pain, not lashing back, but keeping it in you rather than just hitting out and getting rid of it that way. And it doesn't feel good. But then it wouldn't have felt good to Jesus on the cross, would it? As he took the beatings and the slaps and the mockeries and the insults and prayed, Father, forgive them. Always forgive your enemies, the saying goes. Nothing infuriates them more, which of course completely misses the point. You see, the love Jesus looks for here is not point scoring or revenge. No, verse 31, do to others as you would have them do to you. That's Jesus' summary, his summary. And it's a positive one, isn't it? He doesn't say, don't do to others what you don't want them to do to yourself. He says, do put yourself in their shoes. How would you like to be treated? How would you like to be listened to, accepted, spoken to? Well, treat them like that. Verse 29, is your coat taken? Give them your shirt as well. Verse 30, give to everyone who asks, don't demand it back. Merciful, loving is always thinking, what can I give? And enemies who experience that will find themselves in a very different world from just grin and bear it. Now, what Jesus talks about here is more than grin and bear it love. Secondly, it's more than measure for measure love. Look at verses 32 through 34. You see, this is far more than you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. And it's not as though Christians have a monopoly on love. My conversion story was not, I showed no love at all towards others and I accepted Jesus Christ and then became very loving. I wasn't without love. It was just that I was selective about it. I was happy to love you if you fell into the right category. Someone I liked, someone I needed, someone who was useful. What I discovered when Christ found me was that God's mercy is not selective. He doesn't expect his children to be selective either. That's what marks out the true disciple. He or she shows love across the board. Selective love is no distinguishing mark at all. Look at verse 32. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners expecting to be repaid in full. You can't miss the message, can you? Even sinners do that. Even sinners do that. Even sinners do that. But this love he's talking about is radically different. This love crosses boundaries. This love breaks out of cliques. Have you ever thought about what makes a clique? It's not that you've got a friendship group. Many of us have that. People that we know better, we share likes and preferences with. We find there's some sort of chemistry between us. No, what makes for a clique is that we don't want to step out of it and we don't want to let others into it. And we hold back our love and our generosity for it. But this love that Jesus talks about can't be fenced in like that. Some years ago, I was invited to a retirement party for a husband and wife who did Christian outreach for drug addicts and alcoholics. They throw in this big party. And a lot of the people were sort of church people connected with this mission, people I expected to see. And as I was driving home, I was thinking about who was there. I thought about all the ones I expected to see. And then I realized that there were also plenty of people I wouldn't have expected to see. It was just a mark of the generosity of the love of this couple that actually unexpected people were there and invited as well. Their love was not restricted. The late Professor Tony Campolo, down in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, lifetime teacher at Eastern University, he once did some research in secular universities asking students if there was any saying of Jesus they remembered. And easily the teaching that stood out to most for the unbelievers was love your enemies. Why? Because it's so unnatural. And for some of us, these words are very painful and personal, aren't they? You can't just flick a switch and love your enemy. Love your enemy? The colleague at work who makes every day a daily ordeal, or the family member who makes home an agony, not an oasis. Love your enemies. You could throw the line out and make it sound very glib, but it's anything but glib when you have to live it in real life. And enemies nearly always have history with us. Love your enemies, turn the other cheek, runs into those realities, which is why we need to look at the next point. It's more than grin and bear it love. It's more than measure for measure love. And thirdly, it's more than common sense love. Let me explain what I mean. My grandmother was a great believer in common sense. She was always telling us to use it. Why don't you use common sense? It was her mantra. I remember in our high school auditorium, there was a sign that read, the only rule here is that you use common sense. Now, common sense is a wonderful thing, but it can be very infuriating as well, can it? After all, no one actually defines what it means. We're all meant to know instinctively, which leaves the person talking about common sense free to define the terms. We could get so full of common sense, setting boundaries for our lives, that we actually could only read Jesus' words through their lens, and common sense can blind us to what he's really saying. Now look at verse 35. The Most High is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Let me tell you, common sense will never lead you down that road. You'll never get that conclusion. Or verse 29, if someone takes your coat, don't withhold your shirt from them, Jesus says. And common sense immediately asks, am I meant to take that literally? What about give a person an inch and they take a yard? Now I'm being asked to give them a mile. Verse 30, give to everyone who asks you in all of Wayne County. Do I have to give to everyone whatever they say? Common sense asks. And I'm sure Jesus would be saying, but when you talk like that, you miss the point of what I'm saying. You see, common sense will seize on any difficulty or any exception to the rule, and then it gets hung up on the exceptions rather than the heart of the matter. It misses that. Jesus, he's not calling for gullibility here. He's calling for love. Love may very well turn down the beggar's demand when it fears that it'll just be spent on drugs. Just be sure love is doing it, not love of possession, not love of my money. Make sure it's love doing it, not stinginess or of time or the cash truly needed to care. Of course, years ago, I was a chorister for St. Luke's Episcopal Church in downtown Scranton. When walking into a rehearsal, I was accosted by a fellow asking me for money. And I told him that I would be glad to meet him on these very steps at 9 o'clock Sunday morning with 2 full bags of groceries. Nah, he said, they actually feed us really good around here. Thanks anyhow. I gave him a 5 for his honesty, I guess. The love Jesus calls for, you see, goes where common sense won't let you travel. In a world that instantly cries out to us when we're faced with an enemy or a beggar, watch your step and manage the risks. This love crosses boundaries and embraces some risks. If someone takes your coat, don't withhold your shirt. Give and don't demand back. Lend and don't expect back. It's less a detailed blueprint for each begging situation, and more that Jesus wants me to get a flavor of that unnatural love. Actually, to give me a flavor of that unnatural love. A love that prides itself, you see, on never have ever gotten taken over or getting tricked by a beggar. A love that prides itself on the children never got away with anything on my watch. Leaves Jesus asking, I suspect, has the beggar or the child ever experienced grace from you? The true disciple, the true child of God will show this love, the extravagance of that Hyatt hotel party, the generosity that's the opposite of the tight-fisted, penny-pinching financial equivalent of eye for eye, tooth for tooth approach. And we mustn't go to the poor and deprived of our community, I don't mean material, but spiritually as well, with mere common sense love. The love of verse 35, the love of the Most High, is love for the ungrateful and the wicked. It's really love that's ready for us to lose out. Did you realize that the coat of verse 29 was the one item that was my inalienable right to keep under Old Testament law? If you borrowed my coat, you had to give it back by sundown because it was some people's blankets as well, and their only protection against the cold of night. And Jesus speaks of a forfeit what I have the right to type of love. And that love is a sign of a chip off the block, of a child of the Father. But then, of course, Jesus would know because he lived that love. Like father, like son, he, you will recall, did not count equality with God something to be grasped. He emptied himself. became a nobody, a servant in human likeness who went to death, even death on a cross. He poured out the love, and God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name above every name. You see, verse 35. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. The God of the great reversal will honor his own. I want to talk about common sense love. Don't go there. No, his love meant while we were still powerless, while we were still ungodly, while we were still sinners, while we were still enemies, Christ died for us. That's the love that brings us life and hope. That's the love poured into me. That's the love he looks for, seeing flowing out of me. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Love your enemies is maybe the most familiar line for many people, but when you start to unpack it, it's uncomfortably familiar, not blandly nice, is it? Just 2 or 3 things we might want to remember in our hearts and our minds before we end this. Here's the first, mercy to ask for. If you're like me, you fall short of showing this love. And so I've got to cry, Lord, have mercy regularly. Here's the second thing, an enemy to pray for. Perhaps God's already put the name of an enemy in your heart and your mind. Well, keep it there, lodge it there. Make sure it gets onto your prayer list. Maybe in a moment's quiet, we should ask God to make clear who should we be praying for. And finally, a Jesus to thank. Because this is a love first received from Jesus, the only reason we can give. So take a moment to ask God for mercy, to pray for an enemy, to thank Jesus who loves us. And we'll end in prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for showing us what real love looks like in Jesus. Generous, risky, poured out even for his enemies, even for us when we didn't deserve it. And we've heard Jesus call us to love the people who hurt us, to bless those who curse us, to give without strings attached. And honestly, most days we don't want to. We'd rather protect ourselves or keep score, just walk away. Forgive us for that. Give us the strength to pray for them. If nothing else changes, just give us the strength for that. Lord Jesus, we thank you for showing us what this love costs. You took the slaps and the insults and the nails and still asked the Father to forgive. You loved us when we were your enemies, and we thank you that your grace isn't cheap or temporary. It's a real thing, and it's what makes us all able to love. Help us to live as your children, generous when it hurts, forgiving when we think we're owed something, merciful in the way you are to us. In your strong name we pray. Amen.